Well, hello there. Sitting here today having a cup of coffee, and let's talk about blogging some more, okay? That's what we do here at Coffee Break Blogging, where we're actually going in a sequence and building up an online business from scratch, but with a blog front and center as to what we do, okay? Now today, because we're talking primarily in the last several episodes and the next many to come here, we're talking about generating traffic to our sites. And I want to talk about guest posting as a traffic strategy. I want to clarify a few things too, because I have badmouthed it a little bit, especially back in episode 88 where we did the free traffic versus paid traffic smackdown. I kind of said a few bad things about guest posting, and I left the impression that it just isn't worth your time in most cases to do it. And so I want to talk about guest posting a little bit here with a bird's eye view on whether we should bother with it at all. Now, what really started this conversation was back in early 2014 with Matt Cutts. Now, Matt Cutts, he was the guy with Google that essentially all SEOs hung on his every word as if it were gospel. So if Matt Cutts said something, because he works for Google and he's like the dude, I guess for the SEO guys, when Matt Cutts says something, they all listen and then they discuss it endlessly. Okay, so being that they hung on Matt Cutts' every word, well, back in early 2014, Matt Cutts basically went on a little tirade, and he essentially declared guest posting dead. Okay, now that idea definitely made some waves, and it triggered all kinds of blog posts across the blogosphere in terms of debating whether guest posting was really dead or not. Now, at the end of the day, and I think Matt Cutts basically came out and sort of kind of said this, he kind of overreacted. I mean, sometimes, he's a human being and he just kind of says things. And here's the thing. There are some issues with guest posting. We're going to talk about that here. But he overstated his case because guest posting is not dead, okay? I want to make sure that everybody who's listening to Coffee Break Blogging understands guest posting is not dead. It's still an effective strategy. But there are a few caveats in here. So we're going to be talking about that. Is guest posting an effective traffic strategy anymore? The answer is yes. But you've got to treat it in the context that it deserves. And what has given guest posting a bad name is the fact that there were a ton of people, and quite frankly still are, who were not treating guest posting with the proper respect. What they were essentially doing was using guest posting as a way to do link building. Okay? Now, when you do that, it's basically a fairly mediocre piece of content. Sometimes it outright sucks, but sometimes they put a little bit more thought into it, and it's a mediocre, like just get by kind of a blog post. It doesn't really say anything that's all that novel. It doesn't really have a lot of personality in general. Usually, it's written for the purposes of getting certain keywords into the blog post and kind of just getting by. Okay, but the whole idea here is that they are going to drop links to their site inside that guest post. Now, it's not just the attribution at the end of the blog post to say this guest post was written by, such and such. That kind of stuff is normal. What they would do is they would actually drop keyword targeted links to their site inside of the guest post. Now, a lot of this was happening. They would take advantage of lazy bloggers who were like, I have a hard time making all my own content. So they were getting very liberal with the quality of the guest posts that they would be willing to accept. And these people who were trying to link build, many times on a paid basis, because they were hired SEO firms. So in order to get they quote unquote quality backlinks to their client site, they would go out there, hire some paid writers, create some, mediocre content. Let's just call it what it is. It's not that great. Keyword stuff it with some keyword targeted backlinks. And this stuff was being posted rampantly across the internet. And quite frankly, still is today. That has tainted the idea of guest posting. Guest posting, a lot of blogs just don't do it that much anymore because they still, to this day, get a lot of crap submitted to them. And it's very obvious that it's just a link building thing. And so it's cheapened the idea of guest posting, and that is primarily what Matt Cutts was talking about when he declared guest posting dead. It's actually not true that it's dead. It's just that guest posting for the purposes of SEO is dead. It's not effective. You shouldn't be using guest posting to build backlinks to your site, okay? It's just not the way to look at it, okay? Now, that being said, if you take the time and create really high quality stuff and you post it for the right audience, the exact right audience, like your avatar is on this other person's blog and you want to reach them, and you can create the killer blog post. We're talking about something that probably takes you more time to create than it would to create something for your own site. That can still work very well. Okay? Like, you really got to knock it out of the park. You've got to have a kick-ass blog post and have some multimedia in there or whatever it is that you need to do to stand out. Now, if you do that to the right audience, like an audience that is just ideal for you, that can still work very well. But here's what you're doing. You're not doing it for the purposes of a backlink. You're not dropping keyword phrase backlinks to your site, okay? You're doing it for exposure and branding. And that's a completely different way to look at it. It's really the proper way to look at guest posting in context of what it is that you're doing. You should not be using guest posting as a way to build backlinks. Google can see that stuff, by the way. You know, Google sees the backlinks that are pointing to your blog. And if a lot of the backlinks have the same set of keyword phrases, they know that you're rigging it. Okay? They know that you're rigging it, and they don't like to be gamed. They want it to be a natural linking pattern. Excuse me. They want it to be natural, because when natural links are pointed to the site, that's a sign of quality. You know, it's a sign that people out there across the internet are endorsing your blog by linking to it. It's like an upvote for the fact that your blog post is good. Okay? But it doesn't work if every single time it's being linked to, it's using the same keyword phrase, because they know that that has been artificially created. It's an artificial link environment. That's not the way to do it. But if you blog or you guest blog for exposure to the right audience and branding, it works. Think about if you go to a quote unquote competitor blog. I don't really believe in competition on the internet because the internet's a very big place. But that being said, you go to a competitor blog and you knock it out of the park with a really, really killer piece of content. And you just give it the attribution at the end for yourself. Say, hey, you know, I my name is blah. I blog about this over at www.whatever.com. It's just a branding thing, okay? And if you've really wowed them with that piece of content, they're a lot more likely to click over. But if it's just another average, you know, plain Jane, whatever kind of a blog post, they're never going to click on that thing to come over to you. Now, if you don't care about that, that means you're only doing it for search engine spider purposes, and that's stupid. That's not the way to guest post. That is why Matt Cutts had a field day with the idea of guest posting last year, okay? So you need to look at this from the perspective of 80-20. I've mentioned the 80-20 rule many different times. 80% of your results are going to come from 20% of your efforts. In terms of building your traffic to your site, we do need to keep guest posting in context with the 80-20 rule. If you're guest posting done right is a time-consuming thing to do. Okay? This is not just some other random blog post that you might write on your own site. Okay? You got to knock it out of the park with a guest post. Now, with that being said, if you just want to build traffic and get leads and that type of thing, it actually is more reliable to go and do paid traffic, because you can go to the Facebook, you can, target exactly the way that you want, and you're going to get people coming to your site. As I've said in prior episodes, if you pay Facebook for traffic, you're going to get some traffic. The question then is what to do with it. But the thing is, that's a more reliable way to go. than guest posting. Because with guest posting, you're going to have blogs that just don't accept guest posting. You're going to have blogs that if they got good quality control, they might come back and say, listen, this isn't up to our standards, so nah. You're going to be dealing with some stuff like that. If you want something reliable, use paid traffic, okay? But the occasional guest post for the purposes of branding and exposure to the right audience makes perfect sense. You just need to be very strategic about where you submit your content. This is not a matter of peppering the internet with it, because that's the mentality of a link spammer. It's the mentality of a link builder, and that's not the way you want to be looking at it, okay? Keep this in mind as well, is that the blogs that are probably going to be most worth your time for guest blogging for them are probably going to be those blogs that are the hardest to get into. If those blogs are posting guest posts all the time, it's probably not going to do you a hell of a lot of good to guest post there, okay? You got to keep that in mind. The ones that are worth guest posting on are the ones that are going to be more work. They're going to have a higher level of quality control. They probably don't post guest posts very often. It's probably primarily the owner of the blog that's posting there. Those are the ones where you can get more bang for your buck, so to speak, with guest posting. So be choosy about where you try to submit. Don't try to take the path of least resistance when it comes to guest posting, because it just simply won't work very well for you. You'll be seen as a spammer in the eyes of Google, and that's not a good idea for multiple reasons, okay? All right, so back to the original question. Is guest posting an effective traffic strategy anymore? Yes, it absolutely is. You just have to keep it in context, realize it's an exposure and branding play, that it's going to be a lot more work than you probably think, and it's not a way to link build or to SEO your site, because that's not natural, okay? And Google knows it, okay? That being said, I'd like to invite you again to my next webinar. It's blogmonetizationwebinar.com, where we're going to be talking all about this topic of traffic and how monetizing your blog in the right way is so tightly integrated with how to get traffic. When we talk about building up our traffic, and that's what we've been doing here with guest posting, there is a very reliable way to do it. And I happened to mention it briefly in this episode. It was paid traffic. Now, if your first reaction is, I can't possibly do that because it costs money, I understand. Come join me on the next webinar at blogmonetizationwebinar.com, and I want to show you how the right type of setup when it comes to your monetization will lead to more traffic for you, because it will actually enable you to do paid traffic. And that's a lot more reliable than having to rely on blogs to post your guest posts, okay? So that's at blogmonetizationwebinar.com. Hope to see you there, and I will see you next time here on Coffee Break Blogging. Talk to you soon.